Hey guys, Algebra 1 with Mrs. Garth. Today we are going to be doing something called difference of squares. It's no different than anything we've been doing before, only this time we don't have a b or a middle term, so we're going to have to build one. But that's okay, we know how to do that. So our first one in your notes is x squared minus 25. Now there is a pattern to difference of squares, and once you find it, then it makes this so super fast and simple. But I'm not going to tell you the pattern because otherwise it just becomes a trick that you have to memorize. So once you find the pattern, fantastic, let me know. Until then, we're going to do the same exact thing. So I have a x squared minus 25. Now remember that normally our trinomials look something like this, or it would be an ax squared plus bx plus c, where I have this x squared. This number could be a 1, like it is right now, or it could just be a number, an x term, which I don't have, and then my constant that doesn't have a variable, which I do have. So I'm missing this b term. So what number do you think is here? If I don't have any x's, there's no x term, what number goes with nothing? If you have no money, what number is that? That will be a 0, a big fatty 0. So we're going to rewrite this so that it has a b term. Now it becomes x squared plus 0x minus 25. Guys, we know how to do this. We know we just did something like this, right? There's a 1 here. So we, 1, see if we can grade as common factor. Is there a number that can come out of all of this? No. That's a 1 and a 25 and a 0. No common number, no common variable. So what do? We have 3 terms, not 4, 3 terms, which means we're going to build a house. So 1 times a negative 25 is a negative 25. All right, fantastic. Let's do this. I have negative 25. I'm looking for the numbers that multiply to negative 25. Remember, numbers that multiply to a number means that one has to be negative and one has to be positive. So I have a negative 1 and a positive 25, or a positive 1 and a negative 25. And the only other thing I could have is a negative 5 and a positive 5. So let's look at this. Negative 1 plus 25 is 24. 1 minus 25 is a negative 24. Negative 5 plus 5 is 0. We are looking for a 0. So we're just going to substitute this in. We're going to substitute negative 5x plus 5x, and we're going to factor. We already know how to do the rest of it. So, sorry, I'm trying to make sure I use different colors so you can see what each thing is. So I'm going to substitute in negative 5x plus 5x instead of 0x. So I'm going to have a 1x squared plus 5x minus 5x minus 25. 4 terms, that means we can factor by grouping. So we're going to put parentheses around our first 2 terms and around our second 2 terms. And I'm going to put my variables up top, just because it makes it easy for us to see. What number can go into 1 and 5? Only a 1. Let's circle my x's that I have in common. So I circled 1x in each term, which means that I can only take out 1x. I've worked with my number and my variable, so that means I start my parentheses. 1 divided by 1 is 1. I had 2 x's, now I only have 1x. 5 divided by 1 is 5. I had 1x and I took that x out. So I end my parentheses. This is a minus right there, so I have to do a minus. What number can go into 5 and 25? It's a 5 if you look on your factor sheet. I have one x here, but I do not have an x with the 25, so I cannot take an x out. So I start my parentheses. -5 divided by -5. Remember, a negative divided by a negative is going to be a positive, so that's a 1. I had one x and I did not take it out, so it stays x. -25 divided by a -5. A negative divided by a negative is a positive. -25 divided by -5 is 5. Now, do my parentheses match? And if they do, then that means I did it correctly. They sure do. I have a 1x plus 5 in both of them. So 1x plus 5 times this 1x plus 5 is being multiplied by a 1x. And this 1x plus 5 is being multiplied by a -5. Now, the question is, do you see a pattern between this answer and what we used? If not, that's okay. We're going to keep doing this. We've got 3 more problems to do. If you do, fantastic. You'll start to see a pattern emerge. Remember, math is all about patterns. So, what we did here is we substituted, or we added in our b term, which because there wasn't one, there was nothing, there was 0 b terms, we put a 0 there. So we didn't change it at all. We just put a 0. We can add 0 to anything and it stays the same. Then we found the numbers that multiply to our -25 because we built a house. And we found the numbers that added to 0. And then we then we factored by grouping. All right, let's do the next one. The next one on your list is x squared minus 49. Again, do I have a b term? Do I have a middle x term? No. What number is associated with nothing? 0. So we're going to rewrite this as x squared plus 0x minus 49. Fantastic. We have no greatest common factor because we have a 1 and a 49. There's nothing that can come out of that. So now I need to build my house. I have a 1 technically in front of the x squared. Remember, if you don't see a number in front of a variable, then that means it's a 1. So 1 times a -49 is a -49. So I've got, I'm going to move this over, -49. I have to find all of the numbers that multiply to -49. Remember, when it multiplies to a negative number, I'm going to have 1 positive and 1 negative. Because I don't know which one's which, I'm going to write them both down. So I'll have a -1 and 49, 1 and a -49, and I will also have -7 and 7. So let's add these up to see which one we're going to use. I have -1 plus 49 is positive 48. 1 minus 49 is a -48. And -7 plus 7 is 0. And we are looking for the ones that add to 0. So I'm going to substitute those in for my 0x. So I will have 1x squared minus 7x plus 7x minus 49. Now I have 4 terms. I can factor by grouping. So I'm going to put parentheses around the first 2 terms and the second 2 terms. I'm also writing my variables above, just so it makes it easy for us to see. So, what number can go into 1 and 7? 1 and 7 is a prime number, so only 1 can go into both of them. I'm going to circle the x's that I have, which means I only have 1 x in each term that can be taken out. So I start my parentheses because I dealt with both my number and my variables. 1 divided by 1 is 1. I had 2 x's. I took 1 x out, which means I have 1 x left. Minus 7 divided by 1 is 7. Now I have this plus sign here, which means I'm going to put a plus. What number can go into both 7 and 49? You should see from over here that it's a 7. I have one x here, but I do not have an x there, so I cannot take an x out. So I start my parentheses. 7 divided by 7 is 1. I have one x that I did not take out, so it has to stay inside the parentheses. Negative 49 divided by a positive 7. A negative divided by a positive has to be a negative. Negative 49 divided by a positive 7 is a negative 7. Now, do my parentheses look the same? And if they do, then that means that I did this correctly. I have a negative 7, or no, I'm sorry, I have a 1x minus 7 here and a 1x minus 7 here, which means that I did it correctly. So I have 1x minus 7. This 1x minus 7 is being multiplied by a 1x. And this 1x by 7 is being multiplied by a plus 7. So are you starting to see the pattern between our answer and the numbers that we found? If so, fantastic. If not, that's okay. We've got 2 more to do, plus you have your homework. And if you never see the pattern, you always get the right answer doing it this way, so that's okay. All right, at this point, I've taught 2 problems. I would like for you to try to do the next 2 on your own. Pause the video, do the next 2 on your own, and then check your answers. See if you got them correct. If you did, fantastic. If not, that's okay. You know where you messed up and what you did wrong. Remember, we learn more from our mistakes than we do from getting it right. So mistakes are a great learning tool. Our next one is x squared minus 4. I'm going to start it over here. Okay, so I don't have a b term. I do not have an x term all by itself. So if I don't have an x term all by itself, what number goes with that? Ideally, you would recognize that that's a 0x, so that I can rewrite it as x squared minus 0x minus 4. We'll do a plus. So now I've made it into a trinomial. I don't have a number that can go into both a 1 and a 4, and I don't have 4 terms, but I can make it into 4 terms. So let's do that. We're going to build a house. So we're going to look for the numbers that multiply to a negative 4 and add to 0. We're going to write our factors here. Remember that when we have a number that multiplies to a negative, that means 1 is positive and 1 is negative. So I'm going to have to write negative 1 and 4 and a 1 and a negative 4, as well as negative 2 and 2. So let's add these together and see what they add to. Negative 1 plus 4 is 3. 1 minus 4 is a negative 3. And negative 2 plus 2 is 0. We're looking for the numbers that add to 0. So we are looking for negative 2 and 2. So we are going to replace this 0x with negative 2 and 2. So I have 1x squared minus 2x plus 2x minus 4. Now I have 4 terms. So that means that I can factor by grouping. So I'm going to put a parenthesis around the first 2 terms and around the second 2 terms. I'm also going to write my variables. Now, what number goes into 1 and 2? That's a number 1. Let's circle the x's that I have in common. So I was able to circle an x. I dealt with my number and my variable, which means I can start my parentheses. So 1 divided by 1 is 1. I had 2 x's. I took 1 x out. So that means that I have 1 x left. Negative 2 divided by a positive 1 is a negative 2. I had 1 x. I took it out. So I end my parentheses. This plus means that I get to put plus. What number goes into both 2 and 4? Ideally, you recognize that it's a 2 on your factor sheet. I had an x here, but I didn't have 1 over my 4, which means I can't take 1 out. If I don't have it in both, I can't take it out. 2 divided by 2 is 1. I have that x left. Negative 4 divided by 2. A negative divided by a positive is a negative, so it's a minus 2. Now, do my parentheses look the same? Are they exactly the same? And if they are, which they are, 1x minus 2, then that means I did it right. So I have 1x minus 2. And this 1x minus 2 is being multiplied by a 1x. And this 1x minus 2 is being multiplied by a plus 2. And now I'm done. Are you starting to see the pattern between our answer and what we came up with? If not, that's okay. You've got 8 problems to do for homework. And if you never find the pattern, it's okay. You always get the right answer by doing it this way. If you found the pattern, fantastic. It makes your work a little faster. Either way, it works for me. So you're going to do your homework and let me know if you have any questions. Thank you.